somebody else is playing. It's, yeah. That
There we
okay, there we go.
go.
Oh, getting used to these new things. Yeah, so now we have a Rumble live stream, and you were hearing the theme on Rumble delayed. Anyway, hi everyone.
Hi.
Hi.
How's everybody doing? We're gonna give this feed a couple minutes to load in so that everybody who wants to tune in for this special broadcast can do so.
Yeah.
It's been a while since we did a bookmark. So we used to do bookmarks, like every week? We were pretty good.
For a while when we started out, we were doing them every week.
Right.
Well, we had time on our hands back then.
Oh, I know.
And then then we did them every other week. And then we started doing them every month. And then, as the intro says, a whenever we feel like it podcast. Unfortunately, it's at that point right now. But we're gonna get back, I think, back to a more regular schedule.
That's good.
Because here's the thing, and you probably all know this. I mean, we're coming up on a year since we bought a new place in a new town, 1,000 miles away from where we used to live. And then it took us 7 months to make that move, and a few more months to set it up, and then a couple more months to deal with carnival season. And now the carnival season is over, and we're in the season of lentils.
Mardi Gras.
I'm sorry, Lent. Although you can eat lentils on Friday because it's Lent. Anyway, Mardi Gras was fun.
Humor.
Did you? I know, right? Did you have fun at Mardi Gras?
So fun, much fun.
We should have brought up some video to share, but
oh my goodness, yeah, we might have to just dedicate an entire video just for Mardi Gras. It was so fun.
Yeah,
it was really fun. Let's see if there's anybody in the chat.
Okay.
We're just going to give this a couple minutes to warm up.
Click it again because I had it up from
Okay. We're going to give it a couple minutes to warm up, get some people loaded in,
some peeps,
get some peeps on the chat, and today we're going to just talk about hello, Rick Bonner from Pennsylvania. How are you today, kind sir? I'm trying to work on my southern accent.
Kind sir. It'll never sound right.
No, I'm a Californian.
Right.
I'm a San Francisco. Oh, and we're drinking beer.
Totally. Okay, yeah. So she's got root beer, which is a hard root beer, and I've got brewski beer, which I learned is a thing from the Barbie movie. So we drove through Pennsylvania and Kentucky many times in our cross-country journey. I think we made 5 trips, right? Round trips. So that's 10.
That's true. Hey,
lentils.
What's up?
We're gonna serve you lentils and nothing but lentils
when you're here.
When you're here, you'll hate lentils.
The cat's out of the bag. The cat's out of the bag. One of our real life friends is going to be here in a couple of days, so we wanted to squeeze this bookmark in before we started playing tour guide
and host. Yeah, no, we're not going to do that. But we're not going to. We're not going to feed him lentils. He's coming all the way to the south to eat lentils. Red beans and rice, because it's we're on the border of Cajun country, so not the
bloody lentils.
What I love.
I don't know why we're talking about lentils.
I don't know. Anyway, because of Lent, right? I said
lentils. Oh, because of Lent. Yeah. Right.
The grocery store that we go to is based in Louisiana, and I love all the Gulf Coast Cajun-oriented, French-oriented Creole food that they have available. So they've got whole section where they normally have, in other cities, even Pittsburgh, there was a lot of Indian stuff, a lot of Chinese stuff. There still is, but that aisle is dominated by red beans, dried red beans, lots and lots of rice. I've never seen so much rice in a regular grocery store.
100 ways to cook a crawfish.
Right, yeah, and you can get your
it's so funny.
Your roux base to make your other your dishes like jambalaya and etouffee, And so they have all these things that and like lobster boiler, not lobster boiling, but yeah. Anyway, there's just like
Just
lots of stuff that I have no idea. So I have to like look into and
I
like
don't know how to do
understand.
it.
Yeah, exactly. So
So we have to go to the
it's
places
super
that do.
fun. I mean, I love seeing it because I don't know anything about it and I'm really curious.
Right. Yeah.
Whereas like, before going into the ethnic aisles in grocery stores, it's like I grew up around Asians and Hispanics, right? Because I
Mhm.
lived in California. I grew up in Southern California, and it was like ground zero for a lot of the Vietnamese families coming over during that period after the war. They landed in my county and then dispersed out throughout the country. We have a big Vietnamese contingent here in
See?
Biloxi, um, but I'm used to lots of Chinese food and the stuff that people would buy to make it in the grocery store. I'm used to seeing the Indian stuff and the Middle Eastern stuff and the Hispanic stuff, right? I've never seen this stuff before, and
Right.
so it's really
So this is a whole new
a whole
palette.
new thing. Yeah, a whole new
Yeah.
palette.
A
Yeah,
whole new palette
Julie
for you.
Julie's seen me kind of wander over to the
Mhm.
section where they've got roux, and I'm like, what the hell is roux? And it's like you use
I
it
know what
for.
roux
Well,
is.
it's yeah, you'll rue the day.
Oh, we went to a beautiful grocery store in the Garden District in New
Nola.
Orleans. In NOLA, I love going to local grocery stores where I travel. We're actually going to be in New Orleans on Sunday. We're going
Yeah,
to go to the Warehouse Arts District. I'm sure there will be a very artisanal store. It's kind of a higher rent district, and I'm sure that there will be a very artisanal store where we can go. I just want to be able to get some beignets, like a
yeah.
package of beignets, either to make or to just have.
Well, we
But
have we have a lovely cafe here in Biloxi that makes wonderful beignets, and
and just wonderful
yeah,
everything.
and yeah,
We have quite a few lovely cafes in Biloxi.
and but yeah, to say, speaking of the Garden District, we went to the Garden District a couple weeks ago before
Yeah,
Mardi Gras, and we
yeah.
went. We picked up
The
a.
sidewalks were like this,
Yeah, they were like because of the oak trees. Well, we're gonna. I noticed one
like
of
that.
our. When I noticed one of our sidewalks is starting to lift a bit.
What?
Yeah,
No, no,
and
no,
it's a
no, no,
new.
no,
It's a
no,
new
no, no,
sidewalk, but they're
no,
old
no,
oak
no.
trees.
Don't tell me that. We just left that.
Right.
I have like PTSD about that. You know I do.
Well, it wasn't from trees. It was from people parking on the sidewalks. But anyway, um,
Benign neglect.
and benign neglect. But so we purchased a vintage dresser online and went to New Orleans to pick it up because that's where the person was selling it, and it was really cool. So that was my first time in New Orleans, and it was in the Garden District, and
It was okay.
yeah,
I mean, it was like
it was like San
we had
Francisco.
we had a I know, right? It's like every city is the same now. Seriously.
Well, you
Like they all
know,
have a West Elm, they all have Starbucks,
let's
they all
put it
have
this
blah,
way:
blah, 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 blah.
this was
They all have the grocery
this was the
stores.
high end, the high rent district for New Orleans. The Garden District is a very nice neighborhood, and it reminded me of certain neighborhoods in San Francisco.
Mhm.
You know,
Except for the sidewalks were like
our
this.
guarantee, yeah.
Except for the sidewalks were like
Well, the
this.
sidewalks were like that, but some of them,
Literally, the sidewalks was like up, like you couldn't walk it. Like you would have to climb it like you were climbing on a rope to get over it.
I'd seen some of that in San Francisco too.
Yeah, but the sidewalks there are like this because of the
Yeah, but I
hills
mean from tree roots.
from tree roots.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
but this one was. You have to
let's
admit.
read some of these comments. New to Louisiana, I was shocked upon hearing sucking head and pinching tail. Oh, right, for crawfish.
It took a while to realize it was about crawfish, right? Yeah.
Yeah, well, don't eat the pinchers.
Do you folks ever watch reruns of the
Oh,
Cajun
Cajun gourmand.
Gourmand? Well, we don't have a TV, so no.
No, and I mean, I imagine you could see them on like YouTube or something, but no. I guarantee. I remember that phrase from the '80s.
Mm.
Yeah,
Did I show the label?
I don't
I'm
know.
not allowed to
Uh-oh.
because I don't want to, pretend that I'm
Yeah, we're
endorsing
not endorsing.
hard root beer.
This isn't product placement.
No, no.
Well, Julie, what are we talking about today?
I don't know. Let's look at the notes.
Okay.
I think we should just continue riffing.
Hey, riffing is great.
Riffing is fun.
It is fun.
So, we can just go on down the list, but exploitation of those who grew up with insecure attachment. So this is from a psychological perspective.
So the other day you were watching a video and I saw some of it.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and
So
you did in your intro on Friday, you talked about it a little bit.
right, I
Yeah.
did, and I played a little bit of this psychologist who, this doctor out of Scotland. He's like super popular, like he's crazy popular. Someone needs to put his name in the comments. John something or other, John Campbell, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
Is he
John Campbell.
Scottish or
Just a Scottish name.
yeah?
I think he was originally a British BBC broadcaster.
Was he?
I
Because I
think
know that
so.
he's like a he's like super smart medical dude.
Hmm.
um,
He has a big, gold YouTube award in the
he has a
background.
YouTube award.
Right.
Who has
So,
a YouTube
well,
award?
that means that he attained so many followers.
Right.
Right. So,
He's super popular.
yeah.
Almost, I would say he and Scott Adams are neck and neck. Like they're really popular on YouTube. Anyway, he had this psychologist on who's very charming. I actually really liked this woman, and she said something about she used the term called insecure attachment. So insecure attachment could be people who grew up in war-torn countries,
Hmm.
and so they've been traumatized, or people like in the town where we used to live, where this kind of like insecurity about life or abuse or trauma is now embedded like in their DNA. So she noticed that these types of people were less inclined to feel that the COVID operation was legit. They were very skeptical of it because they're so used to the abuse, and they're constantly like scanning the room for abusers to make sure that no one's gonna come up behind them and abuse them like they've been like has been done to them their whole life. So those types of people with insecure attachment syndrome, whether it was financially insecure attachment or even emotionally, or you know through their family life or whatever, they were the ones that were more skeptical. So I always said that the group of people that seem to be like not believing the COVID operation are so, they're kind of, a lot of them are kind of like really traumatized.
Hmm.
Like there's a lot of trauma and scapegoating in their backgrounds and in their family of origin.
Now,
They're the black sheep of the family. They're the outliers. So all the people that kind of just, all this ragtag group of people that had never really been fully accepted into their family of origins or um, into their friend groups.
mhm.
They were tolerated. That's it. These are the kinds of people that were tolerated. They tended to all sort of come together during the COVID
Mhm.
operation.
Well, we saw evidence of that in our own house,
Yeah,
right? I
yeah,
mean,
we
because
did.
we had
I know, right? We had people
we
over at
invited
our old.
people
I
we
know.
invited people over to our house.
So during the time
We're so
when
busted.
you weren't supposed to have anybody come over and you were supposed to be like locked down, um, we had parties. We said, the government's telling us that we should lock down, and so our response to that is to have a party. So we had a party, and there was alcohol involved, and there was, food involved,
Yeah.
and normal stuff. But the people that showed up, I would say a good majority of them were those types of people
Mhm.
were the kind of the black sheep, you know, think differently, were always pushed out, probably weren't very popular in school, those kind of people,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of some of them really traumatized and some of them really fucked
Mhm.
up.
Now,
Not the people that came to our house,
no,
but in
but
general, the people that were not following the COVID narrative. So what you have left over in society is just this kind of like stew of trauma. Okay, so
and we saw a lot of that in the town that we used to live in.
oh god.
Uh,
Except what was really interesting is that the traumatized people in the town that we lived in were so oppressed their whole life and believed that the authoritarians were right about everything. They just fell in line with the COVID stuff.
Mhm.
So you know what? Everything I just said, forget it.
Well, no, no.
That theory doesn't
No,
stand.
yeah, I know exactly. But the thing is, I think that you have degrees, right?
Hmm.
And so these people were so traumatized. I'm thinking of that couple that would walk around all the time.
Hmm.
They had substance abuse problems. They were evicted from the house they were living in. They lost custody of their special needs daughter. They were still living in the neighborhood in a what we called a halfway house, and I think it was not
I
an
think they were
official place.
squatting.
Yeah, they were probably squatting in that place,
Yeah.
but they were
He was in and out of jail.
yeah. I mean, so but they lived in one place where a lot of people who were coming out of jail or coming out of the system of some kind would live there for maybe 2 weeks and then move on. These people stayed there, and I think they were basically helping the guy who had the lease because he was in a wheelchair half the time.
Hmm.
Anyway, so I guess what I'm trying to say is that neighborhood especially was full of highly traumatized people, the kind of people that in the book Class by Paul Fussell would call like the bottom out of sight class, right?
Hmm.
They're people who are just below society's viewpoint, or they're below the radar.
If you live in a city, you have stepped over them. They have asked you for money.
You've just walked by them.
You've walked by them. If you live in a city, I don't really see that class
Right.
where we live
Well, we do
anymore.
have some of them.
There's some
Yeah,
here,
yeah.
but most of our followers, except for maybe a couple, don't really see that invisible
Mhm,
class
mhm.
with who have what's called insecure attachment. So, moving on to the next topic,
So you watched a movie the other day,
I
right?
did
Yeah, you watched a movie called The War on Children.
the war on children. I did, and I agreed with about 70% of it. So one thing you need to learn about this platform is that we don't have any heroes and we don't like anybody. We like each
We
other.
like each other.
We like
Well,
our
we
friends,
like
but
people. We like people, but
we
we
like
don't
you,
have heroes.
but we
Okay.
don't have heroes.
Okay.
So the War on Children was a production that was done by a married couple that came out of Hollywood. So their production value is really high, but there were some parts of their film that I just simply did not agree with. And one of the things that just makes me laugh every time I hear it used to get me mad, now it makes me laugh,
Hmm.
is that they're constantly using the term Marxism to describe fascism. So
Right. So
let's have a little
yeah.
a little lesson from
Well,
Professor JP.
they were saying radical left and socialist. They never said Marxism, but they were implying
Hmm.
that. Did
Yes,
they?
they
Oh,
did.
okay. Then I didn't hear that part. I kind of heard the movie being, the audio of the movie kind of drifting throughout the house as I was like cleaning the house, and Julie was watching it and doing her thing. And anyway, so I'd catch little pieces here and there, but we were both kind of going, ugh.
Ugh.
Okay, so first of all,
Only 30% of the time, though.
you guys who are maybe new to us, you have to know that we're not pro-Marxist, we're not pro-socialist.
Oh,
We are anarchists, or I am at least.
I don't know what I am.
You don't know what you are.
I guess I'm
And I put
anarchist.
yeah, I would consider
Probably
you
more than you,
sometimes.
if you think about it.
Well, I don't know, but this isn't a one-upsmanship, Julie.
Okay, can you please
Well,
define?
let me get there. Let me get there.
Okay.
Okay, so I consider myself post-left anarchist, which means that I reject the socialist aspect of some um, uh, forms of anarchism. Okay. Um, so what they keep coming back to is, they keep saying, oh, it's Marxist or it's socialist because of the way that they're making people go to state schools. The government owns the schools. These are state schools. These are not public schools. Okay, I get that. I agree with that. But this is not a Marxist or a socialist campaign or movement. What is going on here is fascism. Absolutely. It's corporate in its nature. It feels corporate. A lot of the things that they were describing working in a corporation, it walked and it quacked like a duck, and it walked like a duck. Okay, it waddled like a duck.
So it's a corporate takeover.
It's a corporate takeover. But
It's capitalist.
the thing is the type of the type of state that is the most corporate and that this feels like is fascist. Fascism embraced corporatism. Fascism embraced corporations and business, and they were financed by corporations. Okay, so Mussolini, Franco, and Hitler, all those regimes were funded by fascist or by corporations. Okay, capitalist corporations. The thing that you need to know about fascism and even Nazism, because Nazism has its roots in fascism, Nazism goes a step further and is just pure out and right racist, right? So they incorporate that into their
Maybe we're in Nazism now
milieu.
because Scott Adams says that we're living in a racist society. I mean, it's reverse racism, but
yeah, I don't know about that.
You don't know about that.
Yeah,
that's a bit reactionary, right? That's kind of a reactionary take.
I think it's
it's
reactive. Yeah.
Okay.
Reactionary generally refers to somebody who is wanting to go backward to a simpler time that never existed.
Oh, like everybody's that way.
Right. Like I remember the Reagan administration.
Right.
You could basically say they were reactionary to the core.
All right. So go on about
so fascism, basically the thing about fascism is it demands that the individual give themselves over to the core, the body, meaning the state, and that the state is the one and only authority that one gives themselves over to. Family dissolves, religion dissolves, yourself dissolves into the state. So devotion and whatever to the state. And the state controls everything, even the businesses. So that's a lot like like you'd see with communism. But in some ways, it doesn't do the same kind of state-owned businesses like you would see in, say, a Marxist society. Okay. And the other defining factor, let's see, is just basically that. I mean, it's
Marx
like
himself was
okay. So let's flip over to like where Marx was, and I'm not an authority in Marxism or Marx and anything like that, but basically Marx defined the word capitalism for the capitalists themselves. He was a consultant in some ways, and he worked for some quote unquote capitalists, and he defined a lot of these things. Now the thing about Marxism and capitalism is that they both see the world as a progressive line of historical line where you see progress, right? And progress to those two, that's basically where it kind of ends. Whereas like, I'm not going to get into Marxist theory, but basically they both see things in terms of like progression, okay? And success is defined in different ways. Now, with fascism, you're going to have people getting hurt. People are crushed because they don't give over to the state. People get hurt in communism, but for another reason. What they're looking for in communism, Marxism, is that they're not going to just hurt people just to hurt them like they would in fascism, right? They're going to hurt people because they're not maybe following the dictates of the government. They want people to work for the body, for the core, right? So it's both are collective societies, but they work differently. The collective society in a socialist Marxist type of situation is that everybody works for the good of the state or the body, whether that's the state or the party or whatever the case may be, right? The country. Fascism is strictly nationalist, and but the Marxist may have a nationalist aspect to it, but it thinks of itself as more international, meaning that we have brothers, comrades in other countries, and we're working for the communist revolution, right? And that revolution is to build a world where we all work together and make it a better place. Okay. Um, and so you're not going to have a situation like what you see today coming from a Marxist perspective. You're just not going to, because that's hurting people in a way that is unproductive. Marxism is essentially productivist. You have to, you need to work, and I forget the phrase that they use, but like, one's own
Means of
production.
production.
Well, there's the means of
Owning your
production,
own
but
mean of production.
well, no, but like there's and I can't remember the phrase because I'm not a Marxist. I don't care about MLs. Marxist
See,
Leninists.
being
So.
anarchist like this is totally outside. You
There's a
don't
lot
care.
of there's a lot of anarchists who are very well versed in Marx because they studied political science and things like that. I was an artist. What do I know? Anyway, no, I know a lot. But what I guess I'm getting at is that I don't care about that. And
I suppose
so I can kind of like give you a thumbnail sketch of what it is we're dealing with. And what we're dealing with is a fascist oriented campaign or series of campaigns.
I suppose if Marx were alive today, he would be like, "Why are you killing off my workers, my laborers?
Right.
You're killing them off. How am I supposed to exploit them?
Right.
If you keep killing them off, you fascist." See, that's how it works. So when there's death involved and there's just this, deep, deep corrupted vein that seems to run through like the foundation of our existence right now, and all of these systems, corruption is baked into these systems. Some people say, well, if we just get the right people in the system, then everything can be upright again. Right now things are toppling back and forth. No, the system itself, corruption is baked into it. So you've got to step away from it. You've got to just work around it and hope that by not feeding into it, that it just dissolves on its own. I don't know. I don't know the answer. But so that's fascism, right? Where there's so much deep corruption that it's no longer about a human being and how they can, work for the state and build up the state and build up the empire and build up the business. And, wage slavery is something that we're still in that mindset, in that 20th century mindset where, we need to own our own means of production. We need to get better pay. We need cheaper rent. We need to stop inflation. That's all 20th century mindset. What we have now is 21st century fascism, and all of that goes away. The past, your economics 101 class doesn't apply anymore in this situation.
Well, I think, and just to underline this, I said that Marxists or, communist states, they do hurt people. I mean, I'm going to say, Lenin killed a lot of anarchists because they were in his way. Okay. But Marxism outright isn't like, the core of Marxism isn't about like, making you obey the state. It's about like working together, right?
Working.
So whereas
working, like putting your energy towards something,
right.
not killing
and
you
I'm not
off.
saying it's a good thing. I'm just
No.
saying I'm just defining it for
Right.
you. Okay.
So
but here's something else that it kind of goes into the next thing.
Okay. So listening to this, now I'm going to go back to, the psychologist.
Oh, okay. All right.
And also what the couple said in their video, The War on Children.
Okay.
So right now, what's been happening over the last 4 years is this really, this real undermining of your identity. If you were working and you were productive and your identity was attached to how well you were treated at the company that you were working at, or the job you had, and COVID came and suddenly you couldn't go back to work, you lost a portion of your identity. If you were really tight with your family and you were always kind of the kooky one, but they tolerated you and everyone got along, and maybe your politics were a little bit more left or right than theirs were, maybe they're centrist, Democrats, whatever. suddenly you found yourself completely lost because they were all rushing to put on a mask and take a test and get a vaccine and you weren't. So you lost a little bit of your identity there. So this has been a concerted effort to chip away, it's death by a thousand cuts, chip away at who you are individually um, throughout the world. Millions of people aren't sure of who they are anymore. They feel very lost. When you undermine a person's identity, you also undermine a country, and then it becomes a national security threat. So the idea that this psychological warfare and this propaganda warfare was happening for the last 4 years and is continuing to happen, and it's really amped up and it's become so normalized that individuals are starting to feel really lost and unsure of themselves, and that's why we are starting to hear more and more and more about fentanyl overdoses and drug overdoses, because people are really lost and they're trying to find themselves and trying to find happiness and trying to find their tribe and all this. You really undermine a country and it becomes a national security threat. Who is doing this to us? Who is trying to undermine the strength and identity of this country? Um, is what I want to know. I mean, that seems really strange to me, but it's war. So this is what war looks like. Um, did you want to say something else about identity, or did you want to move on to equity?
I don't have to. Well, I don't have to move on yet, but I think that you know, talking about that movie, and in regard to what you're saying about identity and so forth, I think that this blatant um, campaign or series of campaigns that are designed to undermine individuals, um, undermine autonomy, um, and going after the children and basically fucking with their minds. It was pretty sad, some of the examples that this movie gave in terms of like the whole uh, trans thing that's going on with them, or with the schools, and what they were talking about. Now, I don't think that it is as pervasive as they claim it is. I don't see examples of that here where we live, but I don't know. I'm not in a
But
school.
okay, but we also know, let me just interject. We also know that the governor of Mississippi
Well, that's true.
passed a law that said you're not allowed to
Yeah,
bring this type of
education or
education into the school system
yeah,
here.
that's true.
Because look at the kids around here. They are so
They're vibrant.
awesome.
They're vibrant.
They're vibrant. They shine. There's
Mhm.
something about these little, with their little southern accents. Oh my God, they are so cute and so vivacious.
Yeah.
And just, you know,
Yeah,
they're
and
great.
they're great. The other night we was I don't know what night it was. I think it was the night of the Mardi Gras or the night after. So it was
Oh
Tuesday,
my
Wednesday
God, it
last
was
week,
it
right?
was the night of Mardi Gras.
Okay, so
It
Tuesday
was
night,
Tuesday,
and I'm looking out the
last
window, and oh, by
Tuesday
the way, the kids here in Biloxi get a whole week off
for
from
Mardi Gras.
school for Mardi Gras. So Monday, the day before Mardi
At
Gras,
least Monday through
through
Thursday.
Friday. No, they were out because they
Mm.
were officially out of school Monday through Wednesday, but there were teacher meetings and
Mm.
things like that going on
So
Thursday
they
and
got
Friday.
the
So
whole
they
week
got the
of
whole
Mardi
week off,
Gras.
right? So they got the whole week off, but they go back to school like extra early in the summer. So
Yeah.
anyway, but still, the kids were out in the street, our street, and our street isn't busy, but it also isn't like a tiny little street. I mean, it's a big street. It's kind of a major street in this
Mhm.
town. And
We're right up from the lighthouse.
and yeah, and so there's a street light out there that's kind of high. There's some smaller ones that are lower, old fashioned ones, but they had some high ones here and there. And it was on, and the kids were out there playing football.
And riding their bikes, right?
And I was just like, that is awesome.
Yeah, like
It's
in the
just,
street.
yeah,
Yeah.
I loved it. So the
Yeah.
health of you can tell the health of a street by the activity that goes on,
Mhm.
and not the foot traffic activity. So if kids feel comfortable enough to play out in the street, that means you live in a very healthy environment, in a healthy neighborhood. So the
Yeah.
fact that we had kids, but I have to say, in McKees Rocks in our particular neighborhood, when it was warm, the kids were out playing.
And they were loud.
They were loud, but it was a closer,
Mhm.
the houses were closer together, and
Mhm.
but I always enjoyed seeing that as well.
Oh, me too.
Yeah,
I love it. Yeah.
So um, anyway, so this attack on the children, and I think that it's basically they realized that they had to indoctrinate children early, and I think Julie and I both have realized over the years how we were indoctrinated. Certainly, I know from looking back in my own self. I mean, I never had kids because I felt like looking back, I was indoctrinated to think that the world
Was
population was, yeah,
overpopulated.
overpopulated. And, I'm talking like, I went to grade school in the 70s. So, they've been at this for a long time.
Mhm.
Okay. It's just they're getting more intense and more, more desperate, I think, in their need to control population. Now, when I say they, I don't know who they are. I think that, and this is later in our notes, but let me just kind of bring this up
Oh
right
yeah,
now.
yeah, please do.
You know, I heard somebody,
You
uh,
just scoot over a little more. You're like
sure.
hanging off the
Oh, over
one or
here.
the other one. You're like hanging off
Well,
the
there's
camera.
also, yeah, there we
Okay,
go.
there you
Yeah.
go.
Somebody was saying something. Oh, I think it was a Scott Adams thing. He was,
Hi Dawn
hi, Don.
and Jelani. How are you guys?
Hey, rainy SoCal.
Rainy SoCal.
Okay. Yeah. You're in rain season, but you're coming up on mud season, I imagine. Or you're in mud season.
So
I
what's
grew up in Southern California, so I know what that's like. But the rain you guys are getting is unusual for sure.
unusual?
I don't know. It's sort of like it's almost as
Hmm.
if the weather's being controlled and they're making it rain a lot there for some reason. I don't know. Anyway,
Talking about this, right? This part.
yeah. So I think it was Scott Adams that said something about the deep state or something controlling. And honestly, many of you are going to disagree with me, but I'm going to say I don't think there is a deep state. I think that they're basically are entities and interests in the world that are fighting for control, and that our government is basically like a corporation. And again, I mentioned I work at a very large corporation, and there's parts of the corporation that don't know what the other parts of the corporation are doing. Literally,
Maybe
I,
that's a good thing.
and
Things are not as
they're
organized
so
as people
big.
think.
Right, exactly. They're so big that it's like these little tiny fiefdoms operating within a large body, right? And
Mhm.
it feels like that's the way the government is run.
Mhm.
And so one of the things that we're going to talk about in a bit is the central banks, and I feel like they are a major player in what's going on in terms of like controlling us, and this they're behind a lot of this sort of fascist behavior that we're seeing.
Yeah, because it's very corporate, isn't it?
Right, and
Yeah.
let's face it. Well, we might play a clip, but let's face it. They were responsible for well, what has been claimed and what I've heard is that they are responsible. The central banks and the U.S. The federal bank was responsible for getting U.S. into World War One, or at least causing World War One, because they were able to make money from selling bonds that they just kind of created out of nowhere
Mhm.
and put Americans into debt. Paying off the debt of the war through basically a bond is basically debt that a government or like a civic or government or a state might sell in order to pay for something, right? So they basically created war bonds and financed the war and made money from World War One on the backs of the United States citizens, literally,
Mhm.
not just like financially, but like we gave our blood, our sons and daughters, and our money.
Mhm.
Okay, so
I want to read this statement here.
okay,
This is moving on into equity, and I want to just tie it up in a nice, neat little bow for you. Equity risks undermining the principle of merit by rewarding individuals based on group identity rather than individual effort and achievement. It can inadvertently create reverse discrimination. where efforts to equalize outcomes for one group lead to unequal and potentially unjust treatment of others. The inequality in terms of Maori outcomes are complex, but not solved by equity theory, which is likely to produce even worse outcomes.
I know that a lot of the equity people look to the Maori for uh, means of solving issues, like this whole movement that is uh, it's a system of justice that's outside of the courts, in which you have um, a way of learning from what you have done through understanding and discussion and things like that. It's been a while since I've read on it, so I can't remember even the term. It came up when that remember when that anarchist woman in Oakland was killed.
Hmm.
They insisted that that they it was a pivot. It was a
Yes.
fake thing, right? Or
Right.
it was like the messaging around it was bullshit.
Right.
She was probably really killed, but
By
they
the
insisted
state.
they insisted that they use this sort of alternative system of justice.
Oops.
The
Sorry.
problem is that these things get perverted, and like what they were discussing in that movie, dealing with like DEI and so forth, where they had people who were being abused or attacked would have to sit with the person who
Right.
abused them
Right.
and learn why that person was abusive in the first place.
So
And
this is how I like to phrase it. Um, in this new world where we all need to be accepting of everyone, um, you are a 15-year-old young woman changing in the locker room, and this is a conversation that I imagine. Okay, I have a very creative mind. This is a conversation I imagine happens between, say, a 15-year-old girl and her principal. Okay, so the 15-year-old girl is upset because a 15-year-old boy is in the locker room with her and other girls. So she goes to the principal and she says, I am really feeling vulnerable and uncomfortable with this man or this young boy in the locker room with me, or this boy in the locker room with me. And the principal then turns to the boy and says, now, how do you feel about that? And then turns back to the girl and says, you need to work on feeling more comfortable around different people. Okay. And you notice that I've never brought in transgenderism. I've never
Right.
brought in like all of that mess. I'm just talking about,
using an example.
I'm using an example, and I'm talking about how you're not allowed to feel the things you feel, and that you're supposed to identify with the things that are making you uncomfortable, whether it's an abusive parent, whether it's an abusive employer or an abusive system. You are going to be told by an authority figure that you need to work on that.
And they call that empathy.
Right. And that's being called empathy.
Mhm.
It's so, and so this is what the kids are being taught.
Mhm.
If you're uncomfortable, if your intuition is kicking in and your intuitive nature and your fight or flight mechanism is popping up and you're telling you yourself, I'm in danger of something. This isn't about trans and all that. This is just about undermining that innate sense of yourself that
Mhm.
protects you.
Mhm.
If you're feeling that way, they're going to tell you that that feeling, that intuition and that little sense of something that tells you that something isn't quite right, they're going to tell you that that's wrong and that you need to kill it, you need to work on it and
And the
identify
problem
with,
is you.
and that the problem is you, and that not only that, you need to identify with the people, the things, or the system that are hurting you or oppressing you.
Right. So ultimate gaslighting.
Ultimate
I
gaslighting.
think that
Gaslighting, like, to the
right,
extreme.
right. So things get exploited and perverted. So like this, the Maori system of justice, or whatever, however you find that in Native American societies too, I guess. But so these things get exploited, they get perverted, they get changed. I mean, there's a lot of anarchist thought out there that gets, you know, just turned around and turned on its head. And there's, you know, because they're even saying, you know, like the movie was talking about how they're emphasizing children's rights, and um, I think that again, once again, is something where, you know, it takes an idea from another system, pulls it out of context, and places it into something else, and just like throws it out there, like, oh,
Throws it
we
into a pretzel and then
this
says,
is
"Here
yeah,
you go."
this is what it is, you know,
Yeah.
and this whole idea of empathy has been exploited and perverted. Um, uh, you know, empathy is something that people that's real and people feel it. But I've heard, you know, as an empath or somebody who is, you know, generally an empath, I feel like anytime I've come out and said, you know, I have this in my background, it gets turned around and used against me.
Right.
And so they don't want true empaths. They don't want true empathy. What they want is something that they can label, exploit, and use to abuse people. And that's fucked up.
Yeah.
That's really
That's
fucked
really
up.
abusive. Um, I think that, moving on into the next little subject that I wanted to bring up, and then sort of piggybacking on this idea of empathy.
Hmm.
Okay, so if you're let me just tell you the way that the movie depicted how children were becoming vulnerable on social media. So you get kids that are, you know, in their especially preteens, like 12, 13, 14 years old, 11, 12, 13, 14 years old. These kids are already feeling awkward. They're no longer in their childhood. They're transitioning out of childhood into adulthood. And that transition time is incredibly they're at their most fragile state and that transition time. I'm not a child psychologist, whatever, but I can imagine that, when you're 7, 8, 9, 10, you're just like, not that I'm a little kid. But then when you start to get into 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, you're not a child anymore and you're transitioning into adulthood. That transition time is very fragile and you're left very vulnerable.
Hmm.
And during lockdown, a lot of kids were then turning to social media. And there were these groups, these predatory groups that were waiting for them. Okay. They were right there ready to say, your parents don't understand you. We totally get it. You're feeling really weird right now. We get it. Come to us. We're your family. Tell us what your parents are doing to you. We will help you. We will accept you, for who you are right now. Sometimes these groups were just full on predators, and would try to steal the child's essence online. Some of them had, the trans agenda behind them, whatever. They were predatory groups that were living on social media using the terms family, inclusivity, all this stuff, acceptance. We understand you. We speak your language. This is your family. Come over here. And so these kids, because social media was designed to be, was like designed to replace drugs, basically. So if you're a drug addict, you probably shouldn't be on Facebook. Or if you ever were a drug addict, you should probably not be on Facebook. But so they become addicted to the interaction. They become addicted to those feelings of wellness and acceptance and stability and friendship and family. All of that was taking place, and is continuing to take place now, but it started, they really saw an increase in this during the lockdown, right? Especially kids weren't going to school, they weren't running around, they weren't interacting physically with each other, so they were left vulnerable to these predatory groups. I would say that can translate into the adults because I can't tell you how many times I would just scroll through my Facebook page and just about every other person that we're connected to would say things like, thank God I have my family right here on Facebook to identify with me. We are all in this together, this sort of family, and none of you have met each other, but you're calling each other family, but you've never met each other. Simply because you believe the same thing, which is that and in this case, what you all believed was that the COVID operation is, a complete farce, and
Mhm.
you went down your rabbit holes and found all the right information, and you found your tribe.
Mhm.
And so I'm like,
And you couldn't share that stuff with your
so
actual
is this
family,
a
so
story about predatory groups, or is this a story about how Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and especially TikTok and all of the social media platforms out there were designed to undermine your sense of self and force you into digital relationship where you found your tribe or you found your family online somewhere. That's creepy. And that just makes me feel like I need to take 14 showers. That's disgusting. I
Well,
find it really creepy and predatory. And I
yeah.
find it every single time I would see any of our connections on social media say, "Oh, I found my family on Facebook. You guys are like family to me." It's like, really? You don't know me. You've never met me. How
Right.
can you say that I'm your sister when you don't even know my middle name? Like, you don't know anything about me, my
So
background, what I go
right.
through every
And
day.
so
Like, this is
it's
weird.
it's again, it's forced that sense of like, I know who you are because we connect through this media,
This
right?
one thing,
Hmm.
this one thing
And
we
through this
connect
this
with
media, connection, like the actual like means of connecting, right? And it's amazing. We can talk, and we don't live in the same place, and we share the
is
same ideas,
predatory.
but it's very much. And
It's
and it's going back to that one video that you made where you had
trauma.
Shamath going, we knew what we were doing,
And that
and
was
we did
Sean
it
Parker.
anyway.
So
Oh, Sean Parker, right?
Sean
Yeah.
Parker, one of the founders of Facebook, and also wasn't he the Napster guy?
Yeah.
He said, "Oh yeah, we knew that we were like unraveling the fabric of society, but we did it anyway." And Shomith has talked about it as well. Shomith Palapataya. I mean, he's talked about it as well, and so has Zuckerberg. And it's just so like incredible to me that people have replaced their sense of self, they've replaced their autonomy, they've replaced
Community.
their community with their digital community now. And this is going to make me wildly unpopular, but I don't give a shit. I'm so tired of it. Social media is the worst thing that's ever happened. If we didn't have social media and we were all getting together with individuals who related to us in certain points, and we were having actual relationship with them, physical relationship, organic, we would be able to overlook the things that piss us off about them. It's like you go out to dinner with somebody and oh my God, but hey, it's okay because we agree with this one thing about
Mhm.
like what's going on in town or what's going on in our city.
Mhm.
And the digital platform has stripped away the thing that makes you an adult. Grow the fuck up. People aren't perfect. People are going to get
Well,
on your nerves. They're going to annoy you.
mhm.
And what do you have now in order to uh, to deal with that? Oh, the block button.
Mhm.
What do you do? Walk around, in your town or in your city or even in your own family and just hit the block button in front of people that say things or do things that annoy you? I guess it's called ghosting
Whatever. Well,
or
there's yeah, but
you know,
that's again something that was made possible through technology,
right. So
right?
this is technology
So you
created.
have these mediated
I don't
relationships.
think that ghosting or not talking to family members or friends for long stretches of time, years and years, I don't think it was as prevalent as it was. Uh,
Mm.
I
I
think it
mean,
became more prevalent after social
okay,
media
yeah,
was
yeah,
was
sure,
introduced
sure,
into the
because
consciousness.
there
You
is
know,
there. I remember always hearing that phrase. They're estranged from their family, but that wasn't like everybody.
right? That was like a
Right?
ooh, that's an odd thing. They're
Yeah, yeah. It's
estranged.
like, oh, and that's such a
Ooh, that's a
shame.
strange
Well, it's
word.
not so much
Estranged.
strange, but like,
Now it's everybody.
but it was always sad, right? People
Hmm.
who always said it in a way that was like, oh, this is a sad thing that this is happening to this individual, and his or her relationship with their family,
Right.
right?
So
But now it's a normal it's more of a normal
it's
occurrence.
really normalized because social media has created aspects of our personality which go to those pretty malevolent places,
Mhm.
like just blocking
Well, I
people
remember,
or whatever.
years ago when it was, just basically, you had boards where talk to each other. This wasn't Facebook. It was, long before that, and or email, and you'd hear about these flame wars, or you'd see them go on,
Hmm.
and it was because you were behind a keyboard. You weren't, face to face, and some of the things that people would say to each other online, they would not say to the other person on a bus
Mm-mm.
or standing
In
on,
person,
in
right?
person, right?
Never.
They would never do that because it that takes away that interpersonal behavior that we've all kind of developed and socialized in, and and then that's where things like etiquette and politeness and things like that come from, because we all have to interact in person. We didn't have social media to mediate our relationships and allow us to just cut people off or tell them off or tell them that they're what you felt about them, because you have this separation in social media that you don't have in public.
And now people are to the point where they're influencers. So
Hmm.
influencers never existed before the invention of social media.
Yeah.
Now you have
Well,
influencers
there were
that
some.
actually make money on being an influencer,
Yeah, I
you
know. I
know?
know. There's the irony, right, Natasha? But that doesn't mean we can't criticize it,
Oh, exactly.
right?
We are using the only means that we have.
Right.
Unless everybody wants to get on an airplane and come over to Jacked Up Coffee, and we can have a meeting here in Biloxi. They have really great food. It's called Monkey Bread. It's really sweet, but they also have great sandwiches for $18. If you want to get on a plane or get on a bus and come over here and we can have these conversations in person, great. But right now we're using the only media that we
So
have.
yeah, so it's an irony, but it's
Yeah,
also
it's
like,
very
but the
ironic.
thing
I'm,
is,
I'm aware of that.
you're allowed to. Well, that was my word, irony. But we're allowed to criticize the very things that this is.
That reminds me of, like, it's like I would criticize, like, my parents. It's like, and the response I would get from my parents is, "How dare you criticize me? We're your parents. You live in our house. We gave birth to you. We take care of you. How dare you criticize me?" And
But
it's
mom
like,
and dad, I'm a teenager.
but I was like, that doesn't mean that you're perfect.
Right. Yeah.
It doesn't mean that the situation that I'm in is acceptable.
Right.
I do not like the fact that I can't. I would much prefer to be, like, on a stage somewhere with a group of people in a room drinking wine or coffee or whatever, and having these kinds of conversations where everybody can just be a part of that, face-to-face energy. And I think there are a lot of social media influencers, well, there's at least one that I can think of, that makes it a point to go and to these places, and they go to a church, or sometimes they go to a town meeting or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
Well.
that's good for them. They have
Yeah.
the money, they can do
Yeah.
that.
Right.
But
Yeah. But I think there's always been influencers. Just their reach was never quite as strong, right?
right.
They used to be called tastemakers. Remember them? Tastemakers. Yeah. So
Mhm.
they'd introduce you to pop music or fashion or art or whatever, right? And you'd meet them either in face-to-face situations like cocktail parties or a cafe, or they would be on TV, right? And that
Mhm.
was when the tastemaker sort of started really gaining influence, and now we parlay that into social media influencers. um, and it's almost like influencers are so um, uh, omnipresent that you get like parodies of these people in like Netflix
I
movies and
know, you
shows. Remember,
do.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
We were just watching something, and there was a and they're always looked down on, by the way.
Mhm.
These people who are influencers are looked down on in these situations.
In the
So
entertainment industry.
right, so they are not necessarily the high and mighty that you might think they are. They're just assholes that.
Exactly.
And, so anyway.
We can talk about inflation. So inflation is happening because the mob says so. So we are run by organized crime, and criminal syndicates are using the United States government and the Fed to drum up the squeeze. It sounds like a bunch of mobsters have infiltrated the government. Well, the government is the mob. So this is how I look at it. Inflation is part of our economic system. I mean, because it's like we're run by the mafia, right?
Right.
It's we're living in a mafiocracy. That's what it is. So as you know, you could have all of the expert financial reports, at your fingertips. You could have all of the experts of, you know, Wall Street saying this or that, but it really just comes down to the mob putting the squeeze on you. That's what it is, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
That's really all it is. The mob comes to your house and says it's $100 for
Protection.
for protection. You know,
It'd be a shame for your door not to get kicked in.
right?
To get kicked in.
Exactly.
It'd be a shame if your door got kicked in, right?
So you pay them $100 just to get them to go the fuck away, which is basically the equivalent of paying your taxes. I basically just pay my taxes just to keep the mob away from me. That's the government, right? Just keep them away from me. Not because it's the law.
And then they
There's
spend,
no law that says I have to pay taxes. There's no law. It's just something you do to keep
well,
from
there are mechanisms in place that sound like the law, seem like the law that like you could get thrown in prison for not paying them.
Well, that's the equivalent of the mob. This is what I'm
Right,
trying to
I know,
say.
I know.
So the mob comes
But
to
see,
you
they
and
make the
says,
laws, right? So they make up the rules and the laws.
right. The mob comes to you and says, give me $100 so your door doesn't get kicked in and we steal all your stuff. So you give them $100 and then they come back the week later and they say it's 125. And you're like, well, last week it was 100.
Hmm.
Well, inflation.
Well, and then they turn around and spend that money to do the same thing to other people in other parts of the country or
Mhm.
other countries,
Other
even,
countries.
other countries.
So it's a mafiocracy. That's all it is. And it's you could have every financial expert in the world like go on and on and on about inflation over the last 300 years or something, or talk about the rise and the fall of the GDP, the gross the GDP or something, and you're just like, it's a mafiocracy.
Yeah,
Like we're
you
run by
guys
the
you
mob.
guys are making this shit up and you're controlling it.
It's just
And
run
you're
by the
just
mob.
telling us stories,
Right.
right?
So what it comes down to is a corrupt system that is devoid of morals. That's what it is, and no financial expert is going to go there. They're all just going to say, "Well, it's because of the way that the system works," and they're just going to come up with graphs, and they're going to make it very uh, like a math problem.
Well,
It's like a math problem.
This is what I always love is that
No, it's
economists
corruption.
consider themselves to be scientists, but at the same time they say it's not an exact science. It's like it's kind of squishy.
Hmm.
They don't use the word squishy. That's my word, but they never really say, well, this is an exact thing because they aren't scientists and they're not. I mean, they might use like some scientific method to apply to what they're doing, but they cannot ever, but the thing is it's because I think it's because the system is rigged and that this is all being manipulated, that they do this. I
Right.
know that the system is being manipulated, but what I'm saying is I think that's the reason they don't come out, and they're not going to come out and say that. They're going to say, oh well, it's
I
a thing.
know.
It's a thing, right?
It's like they're just making it into math.
Okay, so now we're just kind of bullshitting, but just to go back real quick, there was a comment, tastemakers. I did not make that up. That is a term that has been used. I heard it throughout my life, my lifetime. I didn't grow up on social media. I grew up on old media. So yeah, that's an old thing that you'd probably see in like Time magazine or
Mhm.
television or something. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's a real thing.
yeah. Anyway,
So Austin Fitts ran a 2023 report to see which subjects,
Catherine Austin Fitz.
whatever,
Yeah,
everyone knows,
I know. She knows.
to see which subjects were trending. And in 2023, she was pleasantly surprised to see that the trending attitude from users was pushback or finding alternative ways to continue to work within this very corrupt mafiocracy. So, more people, Americans mostly, were working on ways to decentralize their time and money and talking about it online than they had ever had in the past few years. So, in 2020, the conversation was about, COVID, obviously. That's what the trending conversation was about. And then in 2021, when did the vaccines roll out?
About
Probably
that
the,
time,
the
yeah.
trending conversation among users was the vaccine. And then 2022, probably, more of that. But then 2023, she said there was so much conversation about working in ways to decentralize, like grow your own food, buy more gold, you know, take your money out of your Citibank and put it into your local credit union. There was more conversation about that than there had ever been in the past. So much so that they had to create a whole separate page on the website to to go through it, not just like a paragraph, or they had to create a whole new subsection
Right.
for it.
Interesting. Well,
Yeah.
going back to the irony that was pointed out, the the power of social media is there.
I know, right?
Okay.
So then there's that side of it.
There's the power of social media is there. It's just that it was designed and exploited. It could have been designed another way.
Mhm.
Um, uh, Sam Backman, which I don't like, but he pointed out a long time ago. He's like, social media could have been designed a different way
Mhm.
to where it would not have had the kind of um, uh, interactions that it has now. I don't know how it could have been designed. I'm not, I am an experienced designer, but I'm not privy to that kind of thing. I'm not a psychologist, and I wasn't behind a lot of the social. I never did anything with social media as far as a designer goes, as being a designer.
I'm gonna put this comment on the stream.
Okay, CAF. She's one of my heroes. Yeah, we don't have heroes. We don't. We talk about people. We like people. We will um, encourage people to read their work, or whatever. But we never have heroes because heroes disappoint. 100%.
Right. And also
They never live up to your expectations.
most of my retweets or reshares or reposts or whatever, I'm trying to do this more and more, and I sometimes I remember and then I forget for a long, long time, and then I have to remember again. But I always put a little disclaimer at the top that says, retweets and reshares are not endorsements. About 60-70% of the things that Austin Fitts or Dowd or anyone shares I agree with, but then there's that 20 to 30% that I don't agree with,
Mhm.
you know?
That and there's a lot of people who will come out and later become known as assets.
Mhm.
And
Like Robert Malone.
right, I didn't trust him from the beginning though. He
Yeah, I
creeped
know
me.
a lot of people
Yeah,
didn't. He's
yeah,
super creepy,
he's
and
super creepy, and I just got this
the
vibe
very
from
first
him.
time he ever entered into User Square, which is what I call social media, or on
or
the
User Nation.
User Nation, was he had a big white hat on, and I totally made fun of him for that. I was like, "Seriously? You're gonna come into this with a white hat? Could you be more obvious?" I mean, seriously,
Right?
right?
Yeah,
So,
that's
and
pretty
then
funny.
after that, he never wore the white hat
I
again.
know. Yeah, yeah.
Also,
He was listening to you.
the same time we ever saw Edward Dowd, who I really do like. I mean, obviously we did The Reason and then The Reason Part 2 and all that stuff,
Mhm.
right? So the first time he was ever on it, I think he was interviewed by Naomi Wolf, and his house was a mess. It was so messy. He has like something hanging from the ceiling, like some kind of hammock or some kind of like um workout thing where you do like a pull up or something. I don't know
Mhm.
what
Oh,
it is.
yeah.
He had like clothing hanging from it. He had like beer bottles on the table behind him.
He's a bro.
He had wadded up like wrappers from when he went to, Burger King or something. I don't know. And he had like shit everywhere. And I said something in the comments. I said, love this guy. Never heard of him before. This is great. Really good information. But damn, he needs to clean his house if he's gonna go public, because he's gonna be really popular. I can guarantee it. Next thing you know, every interview after that, nice and clean, totally clean. So
yeah, well,
yeah.
You notice we put a curtain behind us. We started putting a curtain.
But our place is like never messy.
Yeah, well, our curtain we started using because the old studio, the Casa Rock studio, was not chaotic in that it was messy. It's just that it was dark. It was a dark room, and so this was a way of like helping us, we're still using it because it kind of takes down the chaos of the background. So yeah, so we're not trying to like, but that's just the thing. It's like we're trying to make sure that what you're looking at is us and not get distracted with anything, whether it's messy or not, like my paintings or books or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, Dad was recently divorced.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was his bachelor pad. Yeah.
And who knows? He has kids, so they were probably over messing in place.
But whatever. I mean, and
whatever.
he lives in Hawaii, man. Relax.
Know, right?
But so along those lines, I mean, it's like yes, we have friends, we have people we admire, we have people who influence us. But I just don't ever have a hero, and I've never had a hero. And because when I do go there, I always find that they always like never they never stop disappointing. So so I've just learned to not put any of my energy into sort of like a hero, worship or hero complex, whatever. So enough of that.
Did you want to play that piece from?
Yeah, she wants to see the background, the artwork. In the background.
So I've been reading every week, and I won't be reading this week because we have a guest. We're hosting a friend for the next couple of days. But every Friday I've been reading from the Great Taking, which is David Rogers Webb's book, and this was gifted to us by a friend. And a patron. So I decided to start reading it. And so that's something I've been doing every Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Now, since then, he has become really, really popular. He's been interviewed like all over the place. My readings are kind of like I'm reading, a piece of the book, or I'm reading his statement, right? And it's very convoluted, and it's difficult to follow. And so I bring it back down. I bring it back down to a relatable level. So I really do believe that whatever we're experiencing financially, like you always say, like JP always says, is that it's the mundane that's going to chip away at you. It's the mundane that's going to be the thing that really undermines your financial security.
Mm-hmm.
However, he did make a statement in one of his interviews that he gave recently that I found it to be pretty powerful. So we're going to play it.
Okay. Yeah.
And then we'll come back and wrap up.
Okay. Let's share that. So that is this one. And share.
And I hope it
play.
And into warfare. This is the threat we all face, is that the violence, they're going to escalate the violence globally. That's why it's a world war. They make it so. So we have to realize there are always psychopaths, sociopaths, whatever you want to call them. They've always been with us. There is a portion of the population. There are always people with crazy ideas that can have these schemes. The problem is giving them unlimited funding. And that's what we have allowed. And the only way we can save ourselves is to stop the central bank power to do this. The linkage of the central bank power with warfare must be ended.
Okay. Okay, so he, yeah, we can hide that if you want. Cut that off. Or,
Whoa.
there's other ways to do that, but yeah, there we go. Okay. So he also was talking about how, before that statement, he was talking about how the central bank, the Fed, was involved with World War I, which I mentioned earlier. So that's a good video to go back and listen to. That same interviewer also interviewed Catherine Austin Fitz.
Yeah.
And he kept asking her about him, about what's his name? David Rogers Webb.
So the
These
interview
three named
kept,
people.
Right. So the interviewer kept saying, "Yo, Fitz, what do you think about David Webb?" And she just kept sort of like avoiding the question.
Right.
It's kind of
And
funny.
then she finally came and said, well, she had a critique of his analysis, which was basically, she didn't feel that he proved enough, and she was looking for more proof or something. I would encourage you to go and watch both those videos. They're very interesting.
Okay, so where he's coming from is a little bit different from where she's coming from. She is coming from a place of Mr. Global is a bad guy or whatever.
Right. I hate that.
I know, Mr. Global. So she says, Mr. Global, he wants to,
I know it's
turn us into slaves.
I know it's a thumbnail, but it's still kind of
central
irritating.
bank digital currency and la da 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 da. Okay, and all that stuff. Whereas David Rogers Webb is more about collateral. How collateral is going to undermine and actually bring about that saying that we all heard for many years, you will own nothing and be happy. So for instance, we're on a mortgage in our house, right? If the mortgage company files bankruptcy after we've paid our house off, which I have every intention of doing in the next 5 years, the company that has given the mortgage company the funding to keep going and keep, keep doing its thing, needed some kind of collateral in order to say, why should we give you money, oh mortgage company?
So
why should we give you money?
We have this inventory of houses.
So they have something called an asset-backed security, which is basically, like you said, the inventory of houses. So the mortgage company, so you and your mortgage company are in a relationship. You pay off your mortgage, you're done, debt-free, right? And then a year later, your mortgage company files bankruptcy and goes under. And the company that absorbs it and that was funding it says, you owe us money. Just because you filed bankruptcy doesn't mean you can't pay back the loan that we gave you. So what do you got? And the mortgage company says, well, all these houses are my collateral. Have at it. So then that company that was funding the mortgage company comes to you or me and says, here's your reset. I know you just paid $250,000. I'm just putting a number out there. I know you just paid $250,000 on your mortgage and you paid it off. Good for you. But now we need you to go on to another one.
Because we own it.
Because we own it. So that's, and maybe they will say it will be less. Maybe they will say it will be more. Maybe they will figure something else out. But this instrument of, you will own nothing and be happy, like I think you're about ready to say.
Well, yeah, sort of.
They're not in place.
They're not in place yet. Yeah, they're not in place
They're
yet.
not in place yet. But
Yeah.
lockdown, COVID, climate, war, all this other stuff that's in place are instruments to make it closer to that point.
Yeah. And, looking at like One Health is a big thing that
One
you want
Health,
to pay attention to.
Big corporation.
Where they're thinking that, Well, animals and people are basically,
same.
the same. So, you're going to start catching what the bats have, or you're going to start catching what your cat has, or I don't mean to rhyme.
Mhm.
So,
Right.
yeah. And
So
yeah, so and the thing is that, what we're living in is, COVID was a military campaign. So to the comment, so many of our friends who work for the military kind of, well, Julie's brother is the military. We live literally next door to an Air Force
we
base.
hear taps every night
At
at 9
9,
o'clock.
we hear
We
reveille.
we hear he calls
Reveille.
it reveille. It's reveille, reveille. We hear that every morning at 6. We hear the national anthem at 5. It's almost like we're living on the military base. We're so close to it, but
But at the
we're
same time,
not military.
we're not, and
And
yeah, we're
so
not
the only
military.
thing I have to say about the military is don't hate the players, hate the game. Okay? So the players are in it typically for good reasons. National security, they're trying to maybe learn a trade, maybe engineering or something like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's, nothing wrong with that at all. Securing our borders.
Well,
It's the game that the military plays where they, you know, wage warfare on other countries, and now it's been inverted and they're waging warfare on their own citizens thanks to Obama allowing it to happen with the 2012 National Defense Authorization Act.
right.
But so don't hate the players, because there are some players in the military that are like, we are not playing that, like, and they're fighting back a little bit. So just don't hate the players, hate the game. That's all I can say about the military. I
Yeah.
know that you're like dead
I'm
set
like,
against it,
yeah, I'm
and
just
you're like, we don't want a military. He's totally like, I don't want a military at all. And I'm like, I'm not sure, you know,
well, given the
I
context
just
of where
feel
the world that we live in, the
Mhm.
context, the society that we live in, I have to admit, I can't ignore the fact that we live in a nation, and a nation needs to protect itself.
protect
But
his borders.
but the fact that our military does much more than just protect our borders is a
And
real problem.
has
You know,
traditionally and started
right,
that way.
right.
No, I get it.
I mean, we were started. The country that we live in was begun as a military
Right.
military
And I
financial. What is it? The
A fiscal
fiscal
military
military
state.
Yes, yeah,
Our
right,
country
exactly.
was founded not to be freedom, revolution, and all that. It was founded as, look this up, write down this term, fiscal military state. That's how we were founded. But I would also have to say that, and I'm on the fence about this too, because I'm not so sure what's propaganda and what's real. But I do believe that there has been this weird fusion of military energy into our local police.
Absolutely.
And so sometimes I see videos online of police acting like they're in combat against like skinny dudes who are partying. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And what am I watching here? Is
Mhm.
this propaganda to get me to hate the police? Is this
Is this
did the police
documentation?
is this documentation, like, did the police actually become militarized, which again is against the Constitution to militarize your police against you.
But we've seen
So
evidence of both,
yeah, I
and
know.
so this is
It's like you don't know what to believe, right?
this is the hyper normalization we keep talking about.
Mhm.
In Pennsylvania, the local police had a big giant military vehicle that they brought out on every special occasion to show it off. They never used it because they were a small, like small suburb outside of Pittsburgh that, they never, this is like a couple towns over, or a couple
It's kind of
townships over.
appalling,
Yeah, it
though.
was a township over from where we were living. We were living in just over the border of the city limits.
I mean, whatever happened
And
to officer friendly?
well, right,
You
exactly.
know?
Well,
Just the
whatever.
beat cop, like,
Yeah.
"Oh, kid, don't throw your gum wrapper on the sidewalk,"
That
that kind of
but
thing.
that never
I
existed.
know, I know.
Officer O'Malley
Mhm.
is a fiction, right? Police have always been abusive.
Mhm.
Um, and it's just that it's kind of
Well,
built
there's
in.
all this weird history about the police too. I mean, weren't they originally like what were they called? The Rough Riders or something that would go after
Oh, you're
slaves or
talking about, yeah, yeah, and I don't know how
slave
true
patrols.
I don't know how true
Right. I
that
know, you
history is,
never know.
because
You don't
the
know.
the person who did that video turned out to be like, he was like, he said he was an anarchist, but then turned out, he was just a fucking asset,
Yeah.
right? He just
Mhm.
went right along with the COVID thing. So yeah, and again, see, it's like anyway.
Yeah.
Heroes.
It's hard, and like you don't want to have heroes. I mean, I think what really made me question some of the things I saw too were when the police were, or at least the sheriffs were putting padlocks on the doors of like gyms or restaurants or things during the COVID lockdown. Now, a sheriff can't put a padlock on a door unless they have an order from a judge. And in order to get that order from a judge, the individual who's fighting to stay open has to go to court and present their case, at which point the judge will say, well, I looked at your case and you make a fine point, so go ahead and stay open. Or I'm sorry, I'm going to have to go ahead and force your business to close. Here's the order for the sheriff to do that. Like there's a whole procedure that takes place, and it takes weeks and sometimes months. So I guess what we were just seeing on social media trending was the end result of this months long bureaucracy that gets to that
You've
point.
documented this. This is about emergency health emergencies.
Right. So, but that's the normal way of doing things. But because we were dealing with an emergency use authorization, so under a state of emergency, all bureaucracy gets shelved. So they could go straight to locking people, out of their businesses and things like that.
Yeah. So there's a
there's
restaurant
that.
owner here in town who told us that is exactly what happened to him. He had two businesses, a restaurant and a gym, and the gym was locked up. He said the police, but it could have been the sheriff.
The sheriff.
Yeah.
I think you said the sheriff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, so his restaurant survived at least, but his gym did not.
Whereas I also heard from some people in the farmers market that the only
Oh, right. Yeah.
thing that they experienced during lockdown was for 1 week.
Mhm.
And
In
then
this town, yeah.
they went back to selling their produce and things like that.
Whereas our experience at the farmers market after
It was
like
so
directly
scary.
it was after lockdown. It was directly after lockdown, but like we had fucking IDF characters walking around as security.
These
And
big thuggy guys
yeah,
with
and
like
they were
khaki
like
shorts and blue polos.
right, and
and
they were
yet-
just basically like threatening to
Ugh.
throw us out and beat us up if we didn't put a fucking mask on.
Yeah, so we
Right.
left.
We left.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm not.
It was
doing
really
that shit.
scary and traumatizing.
Yeah.
You're at an outdoor market, right?
Right.
And they had the little things on the ground that you had to stand on, and
And
we had-
all the booths were like really spaced apart, and it's like this is not a farmer's market.
This is the most dystopian thing. I even did a video of it called Asparagus. So if you guys want to take a look at it,
Go to YouTube.
that's I tried my hand at like horror film. I used like a horror film
Yeah.
soundtrack and blood on the screen and all that stuff.
Asparagus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you guys want to go check it out, it's one of the very first things I ever did, all the way back in 2020.
During the COVID period, because we were doing
Mhm.
stuff before that. But yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's pretty much. We should play it. No,
No, we won't.
That's okay.
But speaking of stuff we've done in the past, we have been just getting cut, by being damaged or hurt by 1,000 cuts. They're just like YouTube is like taking this video off and that video off, and now we've been we had at one point we were able to advertise. We stopped doing that because we just didn't, it's like
Yeah.
fuck that. We weren't making any money from it anyway, so why subject our viewers to advertising and make YouTube money that we weren't seeing any part of.
Right.
So we stopped doing that, but they took away our advertising rights, and so we don't make any money from our videos any longer. If anything, they go in and allow third parties to make
Money off
copyright
of us.
claims on content
Fake
that we use.
copyright claims.
Right,
I
fake
might
copyright
add.
claims on content like music that we've used that is copyright free and available for people like us to use for
That's why
free.
we need to make our own music now.
Right.
That's just all there is to it.
And they make copyright claims, and they're allowed to make money on our work when we're not allowed to, because YouTube will ignore the copyright claim or the dispute that we registered with that that false claim. So it's a rigged system, and we have
Mhm.
been squashed. And there's a lot of things that are wrong. Scott Adams keeps talking about freedom of speech. Well, he got pretty fucked over, but he didn't get like squeezed down to nothing.
Right.
Julie literally saw the numbers on her recent video go down.
In reverse. I watched it with my own two eyes. I was on YouTube, and the numbers reversed. I was like, wow, I've heard about people saying that they've seen it, but
Mhm.
now I actually did see it. I wish I
Yeah.
could do like a screen recording.
Yeah.
It was crazy. It was like creepy. It
Mhm.
was like someone had gone in.
How is that possible? Did people take back their viewing time? That doesn't make sense.
No.
You can't do that. That's
Hey, Linda, you're catching us at the very end. We have been live for
about 90 minutes.
about 90 minutes, so we
Yeah.
should definitely sign off. So hopefully you can go back and watch the beginning of this.
Yep.
And hopefully you get something out of it.
We are on YouTube, Rockfin,
Rumble.
and Facebook, and on Twitter.
Twitter.
Although you can't go back and watch us on Twitter. This is only live on Twitter. And I'll call it Twitter because I think it's Twitter
It's Twitter.
by X.
Mhm.
And whatever. Branding. So anyway, any last thoughts, or
No.
did you want to talk about anything else?
No, I think we're good. I want to say how much I appreciate the people who continue to support us on Patreon and the donations that we've received. And just encourage people to spend as much time with other people out there in the world as
Yeah.
much as possible. I think that I have a whole theory about Mardi Gras, and you hold some of that same theory and belief in your mind that I do, which is that it's very interesting that the North and the West, like I'm just talking. I know that there's Carnival in San Francisco, and I know
Yeah,
that,
but that's a different thing.
but the North
They do it
and
in May.
yeah, the North and the West like don't do the thing that we just experienced here on the Gulf Coast in the South, which was giant crowds of people getting together to just blow off steam. And you need that as a human being. You need to like get kind of rowdy. You need to throw some beads. You need to catch some beads. You need to eat some cake. Human beings really need to blow off steam. And I think what happens in social media is a lot of people are addicted to social media now, and they're not blowing off steam. They don't have a community like we have here that is dedicated to an entire month of partying. That's really what it is.
Sometimes it's more than. I mean, this started in January and ended just last week.
Right.
Sometimes it goes longer.
For this year, it went from January 5th to February 13th.
Yeah.
So and then it has it all comes to a close on Fat Tuesday or Mardi Gras. And for this year, it was February 13th.
Next year it's going to be in March.
Next year it will be. It just depends.
It depends on when Easter falls.
Right. So and I think there's something to that. It goes back to the real meaning of Christmas, which is that it was a fabricated capitalist construct to get people to buy things and also to get people to go inside. Because what Christmas used to be, or what the season used to be, it used to be a season where, the plebes or the peasants would bang on the doors of the rich people and say, give us some shit or else we're going to burn your house down.
Or we're going to break shit. Right?
Or we're going to break shit. And so they would throw some coins at them, or they'd throw some jewelry at them.
Or they'd have a dinner for them.
Or they'd have a dinner for them, or, something. That's really what the season of Yule, right, was about.
Right.
And it was a season of misrule. And the capitalists and those people that had the money, they were getting real sick of it. So what, Rockefeller and
no, not Rockefeller.
Not Rockefeller.
No, it was a group of rich New York higher, like the bourgeoisie of New York in the 19th century, in
They
the early 19th century.
created this idea that Christmas was a time to stay home and
Right.
be snuggly with your family and be
So-
cozy
so go-
and talk about the birth of baby Jesus and blah, blah, blah.
Well, no, they didn't even talk about
I
that.
know,
No,
I
they
know,
didn't.
I
They
know.
didn't.
I added that part.
Yeah, but they didn't.
I added that part.
Yeah,
'cause we're
but
not
so
Christians.
yeah, right. But
So-
so here's the thing. Go back and watch our video, Resetting Christmas, and the latest one was I think like 2021 or 2022 or something. Watch that, the updated one. They both say the same thing basically.
I guess,
But
yeah.
at the time of the revolution, well, before the revolution, when the country was still a colony, the only people in the United States who celebrated Christmas as a religious holiday were the Catholics. The Protestants didn't even acknowledge it as a holiday. The Pilgrims, the people who allegedly came here, they thought of it as a papist holiday that they admonished.
shunned it.
They shunned it, and they made it illegal to celebrate Christmas. And so Christmas was just a one-day thing that was acknowledged by the Catholics. It was later adopted into the other church, the other Christian churches. But it was still a day where you'd go to church and still go to work. It wasn't anything beyond that. What we celebrate now as Christmas is a 200-year fiction, fictitious, like sort of like way of celebrating. So go back and watch that.
Yeah.
It's,
But I guess what I'm trying to say is that the season of misrule.
Yeah, it's the season of
The
misrule.
season of misrule and partying for an entire month or an entire season
Mhm.
is still happening
And Mardi
in
Gras.
many cities across the United States, especially in the South, and they call it Mardi Gras.
Mhm.
New Orleans, all these little French colony towns along the Mississippi coast here celebrate it. And it's wacky. And they blow off steam and they have parties.
And every town has its, like every region or city has its own traditions. So
Mhm.
each Mardi Gras will be different. And
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love
I
that.
mean, you can just like there's hundreds of people that get together and they have noisemakers and trombones and drums and music, and everybody's dressed up in wacky clothes, and they all just march through a neighborhood in your town, and they just blow off steam, and then they'll go and drink, and they'll give money back to the local economy by drinking and eating the food. It's like you don't get that in the north. You don't have that even on the west.
Not in San Francisco.
And not in San Francisco unless
Yeah.
you count Beta Breakers, which
But
I don't.
that doesn't even help the economy.
No, it doesn't do anything. And it's only for one day.
Right.
This is for an entire month where
Entire season. Yeah.
you get parties, you get balls, you get partying in the street, noisemakers, food, cake is shared with your neighbors. Happy Mardi Gras for a whole month.
Get yourself a king cake.
Right. Happy Mardi Gras. Like people throwing shit at you at the parades, like beads and cupcakes or moon pies
yeah.
or whatever.
Ramen. We got a pack of ramen.
Ramen noodles. So you don't have that opportunity to really blow off steam, which human beings really need to do. Human beings need to do it. Unfortunately, social media has replaced that. And that's really sad, So
Well, other social behaviors and social modification over the years, especially since World War II, has modified that and curtailed the idea. Just the idea of suburbs, I think, has really killed a lot of traditions and human interaction. I think the suburb was designed to kill human interaction. In the 50s and early 60s, there was a psychological malaise that kind of fell over the entire country. And you see that in it's not a documentation, but it's a depiction of it in like the show Mad Men, right? And some art and some creative output during that time depicted it and documented it. And so I think that what we as a society have become are insular people living in our houses, and I'm even guilty of that, to the point where it's like we work from home. I work from home. I don't go to an office. I like it, but at the same time, we moved to a place where we knew we would have community. That was
Yeah.
something that we sought out when we decided to move from our
Real
town.
community.
Yeah, from our
Mhm.
from the place we were living before in Pittsburgh.
Right.
We decided that we needed to have certain criteria, and one of those criteria was a sense of community, meaning a city center, a place where they're not just commerce, right? We didn't want just commerce. We wanted a place for people where people could gather,
Right.
and this place has it in spades.
Oh, they do have it in spades,
Yeah.
like a whole month of gatherings.
Well, there's something always going on, and there the towns up
Awesome.
and down the Mississippi coast,
Mhm.
especially there's a town up west of here called Bay St. Louis that's doing something all the freaking time.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
so
It's very interesting living here. I want to wrap up
Mhm.
this evening with what you said about how these colonies were founded. So they were not only fighting the English, but then also
Oh,
the
so
Mexican.
well, the
like
French. Well, no, the French colony. So Biloxi and Ocean Springs were founded as a fort. Um, uh, D'Iberville, the the representative of the French state, came down from Quebec to basically rout out the Spanish. So cut off the Spanish and cut off the British. This was post um, 7 Years' War. The French wanted to find the mouth of the Mississippi River and establish a town there. That became uh, 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 New Orleans. I was trying to think of the French word for it. That's not nouveau. It's anyway. Doesn't matter. Anyway, and so he went around Florida and established a town, Mobile, Alabama, or they. I don't know if he did, but the French established Mobile, Alabama, um, Biloxi, and Ocean Springs is like old Biloxi. It was at one point the governing seat for the colony of Louisiana, and then it got moved to New Orleans, and basically. This was set up as French colonies as sort of a military way of keeping the Spanish at bay and the English from getting anywhere west of the Mississippi River. So there's some other things that are going on. Just go to Wikipedia and look up Biloxi,
Mhm.
Mississippi, and you can see about the history of that. So
Yeah.
it's decent source for quick reading.
So there's a lot of French
Lots of
inspired.
French.
We had our
influence here,
our
yeah.
former neighbor like send us some sort of like video or headline of like a shooting in Jackson, Mississippi. And I'm like,
That's not where we
that's
live,
not where we live. We live in Biloxi, which is
on the coast.
on the coast, and it's basically a French colony. So it's a completely different, even a different
the
kind
French
of accent.
the
A
French
little
culture the French culture
bit is here.
still is very pervasive here.
Yeah.
Even 300. Biloxi just celebrated its 325th anniversary
Right.
on Mardi Gras Day.
Yeah.
So it's been around for a while, and the French culture still still is very influential here.
Right.
And it lasted even through the Spanish actually uh, had control of Biloxi for a while, and yet there were still plenty of French people around to keep that culture going. So
Mhm.
it's still very, very much alive here.
Yeah. So thank you for that. I wanted you to just
Yeah,
kind
that's
of
a thumbnail.
bring that into
I have roots with the people here because my family was from France and Quebec, mostly on my father's side. So and my grandmother's side, my grandfather and grandmother's side, on my dad's side. So I have roots, common roots with the people of
yeah,
Biloxi.
yeah,
So
yeah. You fit right in here.
yep,
Well, we both do.
yep.
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
All right.
So we want to thank you for joining. We're not sure when we'll be going live again, but I will be picking up the Friday reading of The Great Taking. Not this Friday, but next Friday. So we wanted to squeeze in this broadcast before our good friend comes to visit us in a couple days, And we're really looking forward to that. We get to
Mhm.
play tour guides and go out, and it'll be fun.
Natasha asked what else. I'm going to start doing the night rides. There's one tomorrow, but I'm going to have to skip that. But the next
Mhm.
month, yes, I'm going
Yeah.
to do night bike rides. Sorry, bicycle night rides. Yeah, yeah.
Oh
so-
yeah, bicycle. What
yeah.
my hair?
Oh no!
Whoa.
Oh my God! I'm going to go out on a high note. Blah!
With my hair. What happened?
It's hard to use this as your
mirror.
Yeah.
I know.
All
Okay,
right.
guys. Well, thank you so much for joining.
We're gonna go make tacos now.
Yeah,
It's Taco Monday.
it's Taco Monday
Yay!
because that's how we roll.
That's how we roll. We don't
Okay.
go with the norm, right?
You guys, thank you so much for joining, and we'll speak again soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Bookmark is made possible by our patrons and supporters. You can help us continue our work by becoming a patron at patreon.com/bookofhours. Join Rockfin or leave us a tip at rockfin.com/bookofhours, or leave us a one-time donation at paypal.me/bookofhours. Or you can use Cash App. Thank you.